Finally, we're on to the really cool models in the Soulblight Gravelords army build. We might actually get this done before Christmas. This time, we're going to tackle the Vengorian Lord. Let's take a look after this. Hi everybody, I'm Wayne. Thanks for joining me. Before we go any further, I just wanted to say a massive thank you if you've watched the other videos in this series, you've liked them, you've commented, you've interacted with me over on Instagram, whatever. I do appreciate it. Thank you so much. Well, let's talk about what we're going to do in this video then. The Vengorian Lord, or Vengorian Lord. You can build this model in two ways. One is the named character, Lauka Vai, and the other one is the generic Lord. But for this video, we're going to tackle Lauka Vai, the named variant. It doesn't really matter though, whichever one you've got. If you want to follow along with this guide, the process is going to be exactly the same. What we're also going to do is, if you remember a few videos back, we tackled the vampire skin. We lost some of that footage. We're going to take this opportunity to revisit that as well. So we will look in a little bit more depth than I had planned at how to paint the skin. The main part of this video, however, we're going to concentrate on a different style of armor. Now, we saw in the Blood Knights how I tackled the red armor in two different ways. This is going to be similar to that, but a third variant. It's going to utilize a couple of those techniques. Additionally, we're going to look at the wings as well, get a little bit more detail on those from when we did the fellbacks way back when. And it should be something that you can tie together and you can take every one of those different aspects and apply it to your models as well. Not just Soulblight Gravelords, but whatever you're painting. Vengorian Lord, let's take a closer look and figure out what we're going to do. This model seems to really split people's opinions. It doesn't seem like there's a middle ground. You either love it or you hate it. And for me, it depends on the day of the week. Sometimes I look at it and I think, yeah, that's really cool. Other days, I'm looking at it and thinking, really? What even is this thing? Now, there's a couple of build options for this. One of them is the named character in the picture, Lauka Vai, and the other one is just the generic Vengorian Lord. We want it to fit in with our wider army, or with my wider army at least, and so I want to be sympathetic to the colours that I've chosen there. And I do kind of like the purple armour that she's got here, and that does lend itself towards what I've already started to create. So I do want to lean into that, but I want to make it look a little bit more metallic. The beast part of her, well, I've got an idea. Okay, let's crack on and figure out what we're going to do then. First things first, that armour. I want to make a metallic purple sheen to it. And we've kind of done something similar already with Blood Knights using filter. So I think we're going to go down that road. Before we do, we've got to get some other bits and pieces on this painted. What we're going to do is we're going to look at how I painted the previous vampire skin on the other models. I'm going to use an airbrush in this one, but the technique is exactly the same. Once we've done that, we want to get those wings so they match the fellbacks, and then we're going to tackle the armor and the rest of the details. Hopefully, we can bring it all together, tie it in with the rest of the army. Let's look at the skin then. Let's refresh his memories. Keep with the blue skin that we established in the previous video for the vampires. Now, this being just a big monstrous vampire, we're going to do exactly the same thing that we did there. So, using the base color of blue and light blue in this respect, we're going to start adding on the purple and the reds that we want to be evident in the extremities of the limbs, which is going to be particularly evident in this model in the lower half of the model that's more bestial. Now we want to blend from the blue into a purple and then into a red at the tips of those extremities. And to do that, we're going to start with a little bit of purple ink hit from about 3/4 way down the limb towards the extremities. If you're using a brush, what you want to do is, as we discussed in the previous video, start where you want the ink to be lightest and then move the brush in the direction of the fingers and lift off, and then it will be naturally darker, as that is where most of the ink will be laid down. Okay, we've got us blue, we've got us purple, now we're just going to use red. Again, I'm going to use an ink here, but if you've got a Games Workshop wash like Carabao Crimson, that is going to do you just as well. If you're using a brush or an airbrush, it runs really well through that and gives you a nice matte finish. We're going to do exactly the same thing as we did in the previous step, although we're going to work a little bit further down the limb. So we want an overlap between the purple and onto the tips of the fingers, the feet, and a little bit on the lower limbs of this model and around the tail, wherever the skin would be stretching basically. So use your own judgment, whatever looks cool to you. Same technique, start where you want it to be lighter and then pull the brush off, or the airbrush where you want it to be thicker, darker, more saturated, and that will give you the look that you want. Another huge area on this model is the wings. Now, we've already painted some wings in the series, haven't we? So if you think back to the Fellbats, I want to bring the red into the wings a little bit more than perhaps with the Fellbats, and that will tie this model as well into the other vampires in that elite category of the army. Since we're going to have purple armor, having something else red on the model will bring it in line with the Blood Knights or the other vampire lords that we've got. Using the wings as that visual reference will tie it all together. We've base coated the entire thing blue, and let's use that as the undertone for the entire thing. Now we've got that in place, we should already have the dark points. It really is that simple for the wings. A little bit of red in there, and we will come back and we'll finish it off in a later step with some oil washes to tie the entire thing together. But for now, we're done with the wings. We're going to come back and hit some more details before we get to the oil wash stage. The armor then, and that's what we're going to spend the majority of us time looking at. I've based the armor in a black. I here with the airbrush, and it's utilizing that underlying zenithal that we established right at the beginning of this model's paint process. What I wanted to do was bring a little bit of shadow back in, hence why I went in with the black. Now, I didn't go in with a very thick coat of the black, so that zenithal is still showing. It's more like shades of grey. I'm going to come in with a gunmetal and paint the entire armor. That may seem pointless when we've just painted it all black. Acrylic paint is transparent, so where it's a little bit lighter, it will give us a natural highlight, and that's where we want to put other colours in the next step. For now, paint the entire thing gunmetal. Now we've established the shape of the armor, what we want to do is come in with a bright silver and establish the high points, the areas of interest, the parts that we want to pick out. Now we are going to embellish the armor later on with a gold, but that's going to be once we've done the entire armor process and got past the purple stage. With the silver is you want to pick out the higher points. Now, how detailed you want to be on this one is entirely up to you. With that in mind, I'm going to sparingly pick out some high points and deliberately paint those so they don't just look like highlights, they look like it's a different color metal on the armor. The reason I'm doing it this way is the next step, we're going to pick out the more subtle nuanced details in the armor with a quick dry brush. Now, you could traditionally edge highlight this using the edge of your brush. I'm going to get a stiff bristle brush and I'm going to do quite a heavy dry brush. Once everything's completely dry, make sure dry brush is a tad moist and get bright chrome or aluminium. The brighter the better at this point. Bear in mind, we are going to come back in and dull it down, so don't worry about that. Work from zenithal, because that's what we established in the first step, and you can vary the pressure. So I'm going a little bit heavier at the top on the shoulders, where the arms outstretch holding the sword, and lightening up as I get further down the armor, under the breastplate and around the skirt trim. We're going to come in with a wash just to darken it down a little bit, and then we can get on to the next step. Now, the final stage of getting that purple armor is simply to use a filter. I'm just going to use some thinned down purple ink. I would recommend an ink rather than a wash. You will get a more vibrant color. And what you want to do is if you're applying it with the brush, start at the top and work down. Where the brush lifts off, you will get a higher collection of ink. Thus, the pigment will be heavier and you will get a more saturated color. Once you've done that, you're pretty good to go. We just need to come back in and pick out those gold details we talked about earlier. And it's at this point I'll pick out any other details on the model, finish painting anything else that I need to. If you're interested in what techniques I've used, I would strongly recommend you check out some of my previous videos in either this playlist or the previous playlist, and you'll see the sort of thing that I've done, but we won't cover it in too much detail. Just make sure you paint everything that you want to get painted. And it's in this step that the saturation comes back to the model. I find that sometimes things can look a little bit desaturated, even if I've used vibrant colours through the airbrush. Coming back in with oils really helps bring life, or death in this case, back to a model. With that in mind, we're going to use a number of washes from black all the way through to red, purple, blue, and that's really going to help bring out the individual elements whilst tying it all together and give it a consistent look with the rest of his armor. How do you use the oil washes? That's a really good question, and some of it is down to personal preference. You don't want the washes so thin that they flow all over the model, but you don't want it so thick that it's completely covering everything up. Obviously these bean oils, we can come in after the fact with a little bit of mineral spirit and we can remove some of them, and that's the beauty of them. They've got a longer working time and we can take things away. You'll get a little bit of staining, but in a lot of respect, that's what we want. We want to use it as a filter over the colours we've already established. The place you can see this work best on this model is on the wings, I think. They'll really go from looking somewhat lackluster to looking really, really nice. Your model should be done. And there we are. What do you think? I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. Yes, there are things that we could have done different, and perhaps I will do when I do the other variant of it further down the line. I do, however, think this is going to give us a good focal point in the army, and it's going to play very nicely with the other centerpiece models we're going to take a look at in next week's video. Did you enjoy this? Let me know down in the comments. If you did, fantastic. If you didn't, again, let me know down in the comments. Could I do something better? Should I change things up? You let me know. I'm going to carry on doing videos like this. So it's really, really fun to put together. And I do appreciate any feedback, even if it's criticism about how I present. Well, it's almost Christmas. I hope you're having a good one. I hope that you're getting on with your armies. And I'll see you next time.